deadly destruction, killed after being caught in a mudslide. A big picture look at the damage, parts of Abbotsford completely underwater, highways submerged. Boats traveling through parking lots as communities come together to rescue those still stranded, and others scramble to save their animals. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Thousands of people are displaced tonight across the province after the unprecedented and now deadly storm. One of the hardest hit areas is in Abbotsford, where an entire part of the city is covered in water. All day, it's been all hands on deck, with the community coming together to rescue people and animals. Anita Bathe is live on the Sumas Prairie tonight. Anita, what's it like around you?
Anita, I'm standing on dry ground here, but just behind me, water so high, nearly 100 people were displaced just back here. Cars are still floating. They're still bringing back staff right now. 1,200 homes on evacuation order. City staff saying, stay home, stay off those roads, stay off the flooded areas.
The east side of Abbotsford's farmlands submerged. Right down the middle is Highway 1. To the right, the famous Castle Fun Park. More than 1,000 homes evacuated, but for many, the order to get out came too late. Around 100 people forced to spend the night in this parking lot by the Whatcom exit. Rescued by boats earlier today.
Thought we could get to a hotel somewhere. When we got across the bridge, we found we couldn't go anywhere. We ended up in the parking lot overnight. The girls were scared.
I spent the night, I was kind of just waiting for the water level to go down, but it started creeping up, and it's kind of settled down now, but it's been a little nuts.
15 members of this dairy farming family scrambled to get their animals to safety, eventually getting rescued.
It came all of a sudden. We thought we had more time. We got cattle out. We got as much cattle out as we could get out.
A lot of cows stuck at home. We don't know if they're gonna get out. We made sure that they had a lot of water and food.
My hope is that some of this will lower and they'll be okay.
While animals are being saved, there's no telling how many remain.
We're seeing waters rising in the barns and cows up to their bellies in water, if not worse. Standing on this side of the water is tough because you just want to help.
The water level in the Sumas Flats, unbelievable to see, but the disaster has brought this community together, with strangers providing shelter, food, and help with rescues. It's all hands on deck.
I just try to come down here and help where I can. I mean, I think, this area is really affected.
I have not seen this kind of devastation in my 68 years that I've lived here. And it breaks my heart to see what's happening to those farmers who put their life savings into their properties, into their farms.
The damage is so widespread, it's not clear when anyone will be able to return home yet.
And beneath behind you there, I see a hovercraft. That was one of the boats rescuing people all day. Now, Benit, you and I are both from Abbotsford. Seeing all of this and knowing so many people hit by the disaster has just been devastating. What's it been like for you today out there?
Anita, emotions are heavy. This is a farming community. I'm used to driving this highway. I see cows grazing these fields, and it's a lake. It literally looks like a lake now. So we don't know when this highway is going to open up. Talking to farmers, there's a lot of devastation here. So it's tough. It is really, really tough.
Rach, live tonight in Abbotsford. Thanks, Benit. And while people have stepped up to help each other, this storm has proven deadly. We now know at least one person has been killed in that mudslide that swept across part of Highway 99 near Lillooet. Dan Burritt is here live on this part of the story. Dan, just a horrible situation. What details do we have?
Anita, RCMP says search and rescue crews found the body of a woman late yesterday. She lived on the Lower Mainland, and more people may be missing. Mounties say they have not confirmed the total number of people and vehicles unaccounted for, but they have received 2 missing persons reports, and they think there may be other people who are in cars that were swept away. They're asking anyone who saw the slide or thinks a loved one is missing to contact Pemberton or Lillooet RCMP. Kathy Rennie watched as the slide roared down the highway. She says it was like a tsunami, the scariest thing she's ever seen. She says she saw 3 cars swept away with 5 people inside. They couldn't find one of them afterward. Police have not confirmed if that man is still missing, but she says other people jumped up to help with shovels, chainsaws, and tow ropes.
Organized chaos. It was compassionate and horrible. Sorry. And it was, you didn't feel alone. And I wish we could have found that missing person.
So a lot of compassion amid all that chaos, Anita.
Absolutely. It's just heartbreaking, Dan. I want to turn now, though, to the highways because most of them are still closed. So what's the latest on that?
Yes, the Lower Mainland and the interior are still essentially cut off from each other. Officials say the Coquihalla, first of all, has massive damage, numerous washouts, the roads wiped out. Here's a map. We're going to take a quick look at this. So you can see the Coquihalla there. No timeline on when that might be repaired. Highway 1, as we saw, through Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Hope, also still closed, and all the way up to Spence's Bridge south of Lytton. There are washouts there and serious bridge damage. Over on Vancouver Island, Highway 1, a stretch of the Malahat, is closed from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. for repair work. It was open to single-lane alternating traffic earlier. Back into the Fraser Valley, into the Fraser Canyon, Highway 3 east of Hope is shut down, but officials say that may be the fastest route to reopen, so we can have at least one highway open between the Lower Mainland and the interior. Highway 7, as we can see over here near Kent, also closed, and Highway 99, as we heard, south of Lillooet, still closed. Officials hope to have a better sense of any reopening timeline on that one tomorrow. The advice we've heard, and they're still repeating, if you do not have to travel, do not. Anita.
Dan Burrett, live tonight. Thank you, Dan. And important to get those routes open. You know, landslides and flooding have also severed the province's busiest supply routes. That means cutting off communities from essential goods. Renee Filipponi is bringing us this part of the story.
Water rushes underneath a now completely severed section of the Coquihalla Highway.
Look at this bridge. There's nothing left of it.
The busiest route through BC's mountains is now impossible to pass.
So you can see this is my truck right here in the back.
Larry Stefaniak says he was forced to abandon his truck filled with fish, headed for an Edmonton pet food plant.
I think its shelf life is about 6 days from the time it was ground up. So if we don't get it moving, it will be too late.
But all the highways connecting the Lower Mainland and the rest of the country are shut down. To make matters worse, all rail service has also been impacted by damage to the line. No trains are coming to or from the Port of Vancouver. And that's creating concern in Abbotsford, a community underwater and also cut off from an important product.
I can think of many, many farmers that I know on Sumas Prairie. They're going to be devastated because we're going to run out of feed in 4 or 5 days. They're going to run out of feed in 4 or 5 days.
There's nothing left in the store.
The panic is playing out on grocery store shelves as people rush to stock up, unsure how long the major routes will be closed. The province says it's possible Highway 3 will be open by the end of the weekend, but the Coquihalla and Highway 1 will take longer.
Our maintenance contractors have gathered all the heavy equipment they can. They are ready to clear roads. They are waiting for the signal of when it is safe to do so.
You know, when you see a piece of road that looks like this,
This professor of engineering says some repairs to the Coquihalla could take months.
Getting the roads, especially the bridges, back up and going, probably with temporary structures to begin with, and then more permanent works over time.
But for many stuck in limbo because of this destruction, time is not on their side. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
And to make things worse for the supply chain, yesterday's floods and mudslides have also made some of BC's railways impassable. At least one CN Rail train has derailed near Yale, BC. Thankfully, there are no injuries involved. There have been no fires and there were no dangerous goods on board. But it will take days to restore service to some of the busiest supply chain corridors. The Vancouver Fraser Port Authority says no rail traffic has been able to travel from Kamloops to Victoria. We have yet to touch on the community of Hope tonight. Really, it's cut off because of the flooding on Highway 1 west of Hope in Chilliwack and in Abbotsford. But a slide to the north of the community has it cut off on that side, too. There are a lot of people who have been stuck there for days, and they may be stuck for some time to come.
We have approximately around 2,000 extra people in the area. So it's putting a strain but on our system within town. But I got to say, the business community is really pulling together.
The community of 6,000 has been welcoming stranded evacuees while making plans to bring in supplies like groceries by air if needed.
We always have to find a way. People are stepping up. People are bringing stuff from their homes and everything else and dropping off at these centers, to make sure everybody's fed and looked after.
Hundreds are at the local high school. Others are sleeping in cars. Some, like the Tweedy family, have been welcomed in by total strangers.
We're very, very grateful for Miranda and Mark and their little one, Felix, who took us in and are feeding us and helping us and all of that stuff, because we wouldn't be able to, we'd be stuck in our car with a 2-year-old.
That's our Susanna De Silva reporting tonight, and we'll speak live with her later on in the show. Right now, I want to pull up a map for you because we've been talking about so many different areas of the province. This shows you just how widespread the devastation is. As you can see, high water and flooding covers much of the lower half of the province. High water advisories are in yellow. Flood watches are in orange, flood warnings in red. Now, from Vancouver Island to the Similkameen region east of the Cascade Mountains, including the province's most densely populated areas around Vancouver and Victoria. In some areas, communities got more than 200 millimeters of rain in one day, and that is, of course, record-setting. Now, in addition to flooding, residents of Princeton are dealing with a new problem tonight. There's a scramble to get heat and water working in the community again as the temperatures drop. Half the town is underwater after the Tulameen and Similkameen rivers burst their banks. That forced the evacuation of nearly 300 properties and created a state of emergency in the community of 3,000. Brady Strachan is in Princeton right now. Brady, tell us what the latest is.
Well, Anita, as you mentioned, it is getting quite cold here. It's been snowing throughout the day, and it's expected to get to -7 degrees, and that is quite concerning. As we've heard that the gas line has been one of the gas lines coming into the community has been cut from the flooding. You also mentioned the water systems there. The water coming out of the taps is not drinkable, so people can't use that for cooking or for showers and that kind of thing. They're trying to get the gas line hooked back up, but Mayor Spencer Coyne says that could take a few days.
There was a breach in their line, from what we understand, that crosses it's somewhere by the river, and that line has been broken. So they're sending teams today to assess it. We're 28 to 48 hours from that, the completion of that. Once they find it and then assess it, and then they have to fix it.
Okay, and Brady, many people have been displaced because of all this. So what do we know about them?
Well, all day we've been speaking to people that were forced out of their homes when this water came rushing in on Sunday evening. Where I'm standing now, yesterday it would have been almost up to just past my knee height here. So some of that water has receded, at least in this neighborhood here, and people are now getting back into their homes and seeing the damage, and it's quite extensive. Water up to 1 meter in some homes. It's flooded their furniture, their beds, anything that they were not able to get and put up to higher ground or take with them. It's been a very harrowing experience here for people. I spoke to one woman, Rhonda Warner, just what it was like trying to escape her house with her pets when all this water was rushing in early Monday morning.
Then the dog was on the leash and I didn't realize how deep it was. So when I stepped off, the little dog fell into the water, and then he got all cold and freaked out. So my husband had to take him, and then I waded through, and the cat wouldn't stay in the box. So I had the cat by the scruff of the neck over my head because she wanted to jump in the water. Waded to my car, and I don't do cold. I don't do cold at all. And it was thigh high at that point.
So we're hearing those harrowing stories, and now people are coming back and trying to pick up after the pieces here and seeing what they have left, if their cars have been flooded out. We are also getting lots of stories of neighbors helping neighbors here, people pitching in, people who are up on higher ground coming down to help their neighbors who have been devastated by this flood. Anita?
One thing we know about British Columbia is when disasters hit, neighbors come together. Brady Strachan live in Princeton tonight. Thanks, Brady. Washington State also seeing days of rainfall and strong winds. It's also having major damage there. Emergency crews have called it the worst flooding since 1990. It's estimated that more than 500 people have been displaced and rescue workers have been inundated with calls for help. Some people have used fishing boats to save others. Let's bring you now to downtown Vancouver, where the storm definitely didn't hit as badly as other parts of the province, but we have seen downed trees and a barge careening into Vancouver's seawall. As Zara Premji explains, it could have been far more disastrous if that barge had taken even a slight turn in the waves.
Crews spent the high tide today trying to get a rogue barge off the seawall, but after several attempts, they called it a day. All of this more than 24 hours after the wild weather yanked the barge loose, sending it rocking through the heavy shores towards False Creek.
This thing's coming this way and then it's going sideways and then it's going like this again. It's coming closer and closer to the seawall and suddenly boom, and it stopped.
But before it stopped,
it was a bit scary for a little bit yesterday, I'm not going to lie.
Initially, it looked like it was headed towards the Burrard Street Bridge.
And that major bridge in any given day takes about 55,000 vehicle trips across it, as well as additional pedestrians and cyclists as well.
But signs of relief when it ground ashore just blocks away near Sunset Beach.
It could have been a disaster.
It's just pretty shocking. Like, we think that we're so safe here, but yeah, we're not. We're all affected by this.
Police and the Coast Guard were on hand just in case it moved again. And while tide was low and an assessment showed risk was low, at 7 p.m. Monday, the bridge was shut down as a precaution.
With it being dark overnight and not being able to see and radios not working, and a high tide at 3 a.m., we were not convinced that if we needed to quickly close the bridge for safety reasons, we would be able to do so in a timely manner.
But with the barge still there, concern remains. Onlookers stunned, cyclists caught off guard.
I lived in Weston for 48 years. It's the first time I've seen something like that.
The speed of it was incredible.
The City of Vancouver says they will resume their attempts to budge the barge tomorrow and eventually investigate how exactly the massive container, although empty, got swept away in the waves in the first place. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
And those strong winds also dashed ships in False Creek onto rocky shores. Boat owners woke up this morning to a number of vessels that had run aground. Winds gusting up to 90 kilometers an hour snapped mooring lines, causing thousands of dollars of damage to ships. One beached craft was broken into with looters clearing out all the valuables.
With this rudder broken, depends. It'll probably be maybe scrapped. If you don't monitor your boat, I mean, wind changes, tides change, all those things, so eventually it will slip. So this will always keep happening with these boats because they don't have the right anchor size and not enough line out. So.
The $20,000 craft was one of dozens anchored in False Creek. What's next for the ships will be decided by the Parks Board and Transport Canada. Let's bring in Amy Bell now for a look at what's to come with this weather system. Amy, are we going to see any change that will help the current situation?
Yeah, it's certainly a lot calmer and drier, which are two things that we need. In fact, today was fairly gorgeous across the province. It gave everybody a chance to catch their breath, and more importantly, gave a chance for some of those waters to begin receding. We will stay dry for the most part tomorrow as well, but you can see across most of the province today it was remarkably calm, not a lot of precipitation. Overnight, we did see some snow near Merritt, and we did have some showers out in the Fraser Valley early this morning, but certainly nothing of any sort of accumulation. Tomorrow will be a bit of a transition day, but for the most part staying dry once again for most areas in the southern half of the province. We'll see some snow up north, but where we're seeing these flooded areas, of course, we need that relief, so we'll take it. We'll get another one. Another change we're seeing, though, much cooler yesterday, and in fact it'll be even cooler tonight, so that is not ideal. We do have this other system, but it is going to veer north, and that of course is going to bring snow to the northern half of the province, but veering up enough, and with those cooler temperatures it won't be the rain that we're dealing with, just a chance of some flurries in some areas of the Okanagan and the southern interior or central interior tomorrow, but especially on Thursday. But for the most part, is going to be a very calm couple of days, which I think is much needed and well deserved. Tomorrow, mainly cloudy with increasing cloud in the afternoon. We do cloud over on Thursday, and we'll head into some showers, and then back to a nice mix of sun and cloud for Friday.
Okay, thanks, Amy. We'll talk to you soon.
You bet.
As I mentioned earlier, more than 1,000 people have been forced from their homes in Abbotsford, but for many of them, the evacuation order came too late. Trina Enns joins me now after leaving her home in the Sumas Prairie last night. She was only driving for about 10 minutes with her 2 kids and some more family before she had to stop. Trina, what happened when you realized you actually couldn't go any further?
Well, it was getting a little bit scary because the water was coming up from one field over the other and crossing the road. And so we're stranded there and thinking, if we can't go ahead and the water was rising quickly behind us, we can't go back. What are we going to do? Are we stuck in this no man's land in between 2 places?
And so then what did you end up having to do? I understand that you went to a parking lot.
Yeah, so we had to wait for the traffic to clear ahead of us over the overpass, and we ended up getting into the McDonald's parking lot and spending the night there.
Now, I've seen images that you've sent in, hopefully we can pull that up, that shows water all around the parking lot. So describe to me what that was like, because you're sort of stuck in this area, and if you walk one way, it's, you know, a pool of water, and the other way, it's a pool of water. So were you essentially on an island?
Yeah, we were trying to decide what to call our island. So yeah, just water everywhere. And it was very interesting. You don't think the water's moving that fast, but the water from the creek was quite quick. Like even at one point, the police boat that was taking passengers out got stuck. So it was getting a little bit scary. And so we're watching the water come up towards the McDonald's, and we sort of had our markers like the speed bump and the parking lot lines, and thinking, okay, like what do we do if it gets too close? We just had no idea. Nobody was telling us what to do or where to go. So we just had to stick it out.
And you mentioned that police boat. I understand that today all of you were rescued by boats. Talk to me about that process. Did police come in on the boats and then let you know they were going to be taking groups? How did it all work?
No, we just saw a boat ferrying people out. And so the one family we were with, they have, I think she's 9-month-old baby. And so they decided to go see if they could get on the boat and leave. The owner or manager of the McDonald's had said he would try and come and get us with his boat, but it seemed it might be quicker to use the search and rescue. So nobody came, nobody told us anything. We just went over there and got in line.
And you live right in the heart of the flats. I can see behind you, you know, what looks like it would maybe be a lake or something right now. It's actually not. Normally that's all dry. Can you tell me what kind of damage has been done to your home back there?
At about 10 o'clock this morning, the water was up to my front door and entering my garage where my electric wheelchair is stored that I use for longer distances. And about an hour ago, my neighbor, whose house is at about the same level, showed a picture of the water halfway up her kitchen cabinet. So I'm assuming right now that my house is completely flooded.
Very sorry to hear that. Abbotsford's Trina Enns, thank you so much for being on the show today, and glad you and your family are safe.
Thank you.
An unprecedented storm. Could more have been done? Justin McElroy is here after the break with more on accountability. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream online. Well, it seems like quite a bargain. An Alberta family is giving away a century-old house east of Edmonton. It's a home that even made it into a movie. But there's a catch. As Madeline Cummings reports, instead of moving into the house, the new owners have to move it out of its current spot.
Few Alberta homes have as much history as this one. It's 123 years old, and it could be yours. The price is right. It is free.
We don't want it to go to waste. It's such a wonderful property that it would be such a shame to see it just get destroyed by weather and whatnot.
Wilman posted ads on Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace.
And we had an overwhelming response. So obviously we couldn't field all the candidates all at once.
He doesn't know much about the house's history, but his neighbor Barry Fraser does. His mother owned it. once upon a time. And in 1964, she had it moved here from the University of Alberta area.
Very, very glamorous. Hardwood floors throughout, and cabinets and everything was top of the line, high end.
It's not so glamorous today, and your clothes might not fit in these closets, but it's got some perks, like beveled glass windows and a pocket door. And it is sort of a movie star, or at least a setting for some. It was used in the 2014 thriller Cut Bank, starring Liam Hemsworth, Billy Bob Thornton, and John Malkovich.
Die-hard Liam Hemsworth fans might be wondering, how much does it cost to move a house? Well, I spoke with Wayne Warkentin of Warkentin Building Movers, and he's visited the property and estimates it would cost about 30 to 60 grand to move. Now, if you are interested in owning a piece of Edmonton history or Hemsworth history, get in line.
We have a long list of people that want to basically look at the house. So I'm going down the list one by one. Unfortunately, I won't be accepting any new inquiries at this time.
Whoever Wellman picks to move this old house, he hopes they love it and restore it. He wants this home to have a happy ending. Madeline Cummings, CBC News, Edmonton.
Once again tonight, we are zeroing in on this horrific flooding situation spread across parts of our province. Thousands are displaced, and there are a lot of questions tonight about why more wasn't done to protect people in the first place. Some are criticizing the government of being slow to react when it came to closing highways and putting in evacuation orders. Let's bring in Justin McElroy to talk about accountability. Justin, is the blame justified? Could the government have done more?
Well, that is certainly what people are talking about after Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth spent a lot of his press conference on Monday morning talking about local governments and how they were the ones that needed to take the first steps in these emergency situations to get people out, to warn people, despite the fact that as early as Sunday morning, there were meteorologists across British Columbia warning about this flooding. And yet it wasn't until the afternoon that the province started to put out warnings telling people explicitly to stay off the roads, that landslides were happening. And it wasn't until the evening that local governments were really in places where they were starting to move.
At the local level, they're observing the conditions in the local area. They're making the decisions that impact that particular community. Every community is required to have a local emergency plan and deal with local emergency events. At the local level, where they're familiar with the streets and the stream flows and the conditions and the roads that are likely to flood, they are out there doing the work that needs to be done. The decisions on when to close a highway are made at that local level.
So you hear local level a lot there, but it quickly turned from a localized situation or one or two small issues to something affecting all of southern British Columbia. And like I said, as early as Sunday morning, there were meteorologists in Canada and British Columbia warning that there was going to be massive flooding potential across the region.
So keeping that in mind, what is the government's response to this criticism so far?
Well, this has come up a little bit. Obviously, right now, people are focusing on what has happened and the immediate emergency response and the disasters that need to be dealt with right now. But it came up in question period today. Have a listen.
The Alberta government told people to stay home on the weekend in response to this incoming weather system. On Friday, Washington State issued flood warnings and distributed free sandbags in counties forecasted to be heavily impacted. They were proactive and they minimized loss.
On the ground, local emergencies are dealt with by the local governments and the local communities because they know the situation and the problem spots in their communities.
So in question period today, Farm Wharf still talking about local responsibility. However, in a press conference this afternoon, he talked a little bit about how the province would look at their response today and see how they might be able to do a little bit better next time a disaster of this magnitude comes around.
Justin McElroy reporting live for us tonight. Thank you. Widespread flooding has left many farmers desperate to keep their livestock and livelihoods alive. Susanna De Silva spent the day traveling from Agassiz to Chilliwack, talking to farmers about the anguish they're facing. Susanna, what's the situation at the farm that you're at right now?
Well, Anita, we're at a dairy farm here, right on the edge of Yarrow where the evacuation is. You can see the flashing lights behind me. That is the edge of the evacuation zone. And you see all of these other lights along this road, the orange and red lights. Those are farmers with animal trailers who are all desperate to get onto their properties and to get their animals off, get the cattle off those properties. All day long, they have been coming and going. We've seen the same trailers go back and forth, trip after trip after trip. The farms throughout this region have been stepping up, saying, including this one here, come bring your animals here. We can take them. They're dropping them off in Agassiz, wherever they can possibly get to take their animals. I just actually spoke to a farmer just a couple of moments ago who came up to express his frustration. They have been able to get in during the day. They've now been blocked off. He says he knows that some of the water is coming in, but that the farmers know that the risks they are taking, they know what the situation is. They've been able to go in. They just want to go back in and try to save whatever cattle they can. We've heard stories of some being put on jet boats to try to get them onto higher land. So a lot of frustration, a lot of concern, fear, obviously, from these farmers in this lineup right now, desperate to try to get in to save whatever they can off of their properties, but they say at this point they are not being allowed to get back in, even though many of them have been working since 10 o'clock this morning to try to save as many animals as possible.
Wow. Okay, Susie, you were also in Agassiz at the beginning of the day. I know you've been moving around a lot. What are you hearing from people there?
Yeah, we started the day actually back at the evacuation center for those who had been taken from that slide. And the only ones left there were truckers who were still waiting, hoping to get the trucks that were not caught up in the slide, but were in an unsafe area, hoping to get back in, to move them around. Of course, move them to where is the question, of course, no routes in or out. So they were trying to contemplate what their next moves are. But of course, like many around this region, not a lot of options for them. We're also speaking with the search and rescue crews who did go back up to those slides along Highway 7. They did go back on the ground. They've determined no one was buried in the slide on that roadway there. They also put a drone up in the air to try to scan the embankment down to ensure no vehicles were buried underneath. They say at this point, with no missing persons reports, they believe everyone was able to get out of that slide alive. Anita?
The CBC's Susanna De Silva live tonight in Chilliwack. Thanks, Susie. We are still accessing the impacts of a horrible 24 hours of rain and weather.
Thank you.
One thing we've learned is that it was deadly. Stay with us for the latest on the devastation after the break.
And another small movie opening this weekend. You may have heard of it. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
I'm going to bed before either of you come up with another clever idea to get us killed. Or worse, expelled.
She needs to sort out her priorities.
It's the tale of Harry, a young wizard who's orphaned at birth, raised by some nasty relatives, and then taken away at age 11 to the mysterious and magical Hogwarts School of Wizardry. The movie is based on the book by J.K. Rowling. She's written 4 Harry Potter books so far, all of them worldwide bestsellers. And if this movie does well, not much doubt there, more movies will follow. And it won't stop at that. The CBC's Sudha Krishna has more on the marketing of Pottermania.
There's the movie, and then there's the merchandise. As Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone rolls into theaters, the merchandise is already in the hands of young consumers. The movie is a potential blockbuster. Retailers are keeping their fingers crossed, hoping for a hit and filling their shelves with all things Potter.
At this point, we're almost ordering as much as we can. I know a lot of products such as Lego, they're selling out, and they've sold out of some of their biggest pieces already. So we're trying to get as much as we can at this point.
But a box office hit doesn't guarantee merchandise sales. For example, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, made over $900 million worldwide. But its merchandise, particularly this character, Jar Jar Binks, flopped.
Yeah. I don't think it had the following that they thought it would. It didn't inspire a lot of people to buy product the way they thought it was going to, and there was a lot of overproduction of product.
Plus, these Vancouver kids are suspicious of all the marketing of merchandise. They say it's one thing to read the books or see the movie, but
I think it's too much hype. It's like, it's taken away from the classicness of the book.
to make sure Harry Potter merchandise is a hit, owners AOL Time Warner have adopted a less is more strategy. Basically, that means they aren't flooding the market with Potter product, hoping that scarcity will increase demand. If the movie and merchandise are a hit, analysts say AOL Time Warner could easily make $700 million from Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Don't know, so.
Sudha Krishna, CBC News, Vancouver.
You are watching CBC Vancouver's special coverage of the unprecedented BC storm. As we assess all the damage, there are some complex questions being raised. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe takes a big picture look at the challenges that some are facing.
The Trans-Canada Highway practically washed away. These images from near Abbotsford, just one crisis in a province overwhelmed. Overnight, 5,000 people in Abbotsford were trapped in their cars, stranded. Police took risks to save them.
People were going off the side of the road. We had cars flipped over. A situation where we had, one member had to throw in a life jacket and swim out or wade out towards a car that was overturned to bring someone back.
The rivers are the problem, saturated by rain and flowing fast. 7,000 people forced to flee Merritt alone, with evacuation centers set up in Kelowna, Kamloops, and Salmon Arm. Once safe, the anxiety sets in.
So our home is good. We're safe. We're a little bit above where the flooding has all occurred. And again, lucky that happened. And my aunt and uncle's house is in the water. My cousin, who just finished having a baby in Kamloops 2 days ago, their house is totally flooded. They have nowhere to go back home.
There are triumphs in all this tragedy. More than 300 people were airlifted to safety last night. The last helicopter rescuing people just before nightfall on Highway 7. A new day brings a new mission, recovery. Crews spent the day looking for any people or vehicles that may have been swept up in the slide.
There's so many slides in the areas and so many people trapped in various areas of the province that the reports we're getting of people that are missing or people that are calling dispatch centers to say I'm stuck is really making it difficult to narrow down who's in what area.
Getting help to people and people to help is complicated by how tough it is to get around the province. All major routes from the southern interior to Vancouver blocked. The kind of damage it will take time to fix. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Yeah, it is going to take months before any sign of normality returns. There's just so much destruction. Aaron Collins is looking at what it will take.
On this stretch of road, the story of BC's latest natural disaster took a deadly turn. A mudslide driven by floodwaters carried vehicles away here. This woman was there.
It was the scariest thing I've ever seen. Like, I had no idea, so I just turned around and I'm just watching the whole side of the mountain come down and taking out these cars and everything just being swept away and just complete panic.
Search and rescue teams combed the area for survivors. Officials say at least one person has died.
I would first like to extend my condolences to the family of the person who lost their life on Highway 99.
The rain that caused that tragedy has mostly stopped falling in BC's interior, but the damage is done.
Water line was right there.
Many homes here in the town of Princeton were underwater.
My people and my animals are safe, so that's all that really matters, but I'm just devastated.
As that water recedes, the cleanup has already begun.
I'm just glad it's over. Like, the cleanup you can handle, you know what's ahead of you, but when the actual flood is happening, you know, you just have no idea where you're going to be.
Up the road in Merritt, people are still trying to get out. One family rescued by helicopter today. Floodwaters took out the city's wastewater facilities. Officials say that without drinking water, people won't be able to come home for the foreseeable future.
People are not allowed to enter. It is simply not safe for anyone to be here who doesn't absolutely have to be.
All of this not far from Lytton, BC, where a heat dome fueled wildfires that wiped most of the town off the map this summer. Now, nearby land has been washed away by an atmospheric river.
In Merritt, 29 horses have been guided to safety through the freezing and fast-moving floodwaters.
Go, 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 go!
The animals were caught, trapped by the raging waters and needed to get to higher ground. A farmer quickly sprung into action and guided them using a motorboat. The operation was challenging because the only path for the horses was over a dip in the ground where the water was nearly 2 meters deep. It took 4 hours to get the horses to move, but the breakthrough came when a brave mare at the front of the line plunged into the dip with her calf and swam to safety. The rest soon followed. Quite the tale coming up. We hear from a nurse who was caught up in the slide and jumped into rescue mode when she saw people in trouble. And at 6:41, you're looking at a live shot at the Pacific Crossing in Surrey tonight. Skies have cleared, but there is more rain coming. Amy Bell has the full details coming up.
This is how we would count 2 horses.
My name is Lindsay Hache, and I'm the manager of the Early On Indigenous Language and Family Program, run out of the NCCT Native Canadian Centre of Toronto. This is our first language walk at the farm. We are on our journey of reclamation for the little ones and the family. The Indigenous languages that we'll be utilizing and teaching today are Anishinaabemowin, which is Ojibwe, and Kenyakeha, which is Mohawk.
Shabus is the goat. Okanagamik is the barn.
Hi, my name is Diane Bob, and I'm the native language instructor for our Early Ons program at NCCT. I think you learn better by hands-on, by actually being there and doing it instead of just looking at the picture and saying the word. Nibishan is more than one leaf. Nibish is one leaf. I think because everybody is just starting to relearn the language, so both the child and the parent needs to learn together so they can converse eventually.
So Gaheta is the garden, and you'll see the word Waketsani all across this list, right? Waketsani is that I found it. Hi, my name is Mitchell Middlestat, and I'm the Mohawk language instructor with the Early On program at the Native Canadian Centre of Toronto. Sego, we say ni yungets tano ganyankeha kerihunyani ne Native Canadian Centre of Toronto nuwe kuno Early On. Yeah, you'll notice real quick that our K's sound like G's.
Right? Okay.
And our T's sound like D's. For a lot of the people in our programs in Toronto in particular, there's very little available to you in Toronto, particularly as a Mohawk person, by way of really anything cultural. For a lot of people that take our program at NCCT, it's one of the few things that really they can do to connect. And in an urban setting in particular, a lot of people are disconnected from the reserve life. Their families have moved for a long time and they don't really know too much.
So good to meet you.
It's wonderful to be able to be that link for people to their culture. A lot of the people in these classes in particular knew nothing or very little when we started doing the classes. And so some of my students have been with me now for over a year, and we can have conversations completely in Mohawk. So language revitalization is one process, right, one goal, and that's where we're at for the most part in Canada. But the next step after that is language normalization. The next step after that is getting people to actually use it in a consistent day-to-day basis, just as they go about daily routines.
A nurse is recounting a chilling experience pulling a family out of a van that swept off by the road by a mudslide in Agassiz yesterday. Laura Ronson describes her quick-thinking plan on News Network earlier today.
A man, I guess he came out of the bush. I initially thought he was electrocuted, but no, he was covered in mud and blood, screaming, "We need help, we need help." And so, you know, I was like, okay, nurse instincts, my first responder. I was like, okay, I gotta help this guy. I didn't have proper footwear. I needed to borrow some guy's big hunting boots, basically. I borrowed another headlamp because I'd loaned my headlamp to the father of the family, and I just made my way down the slide, down the side of the mountain to where their van was, and it was pretty gnarly. The van was, I guess it had rolled multiple times. All of the windows were cracked, like all open. 2 trees, thankfully, were bracing the van from going down the cliff even further and into the Fraser. This family was saved by trees, basically. And you know, they were all alive inside. They were all talking. I did my kind of, like my assessments, my airway, breathing, circulation, and make sure that they were going to be okay to get out of the van. They wasn't going to injure their spine. So, you know, me and the dad and kind of braced one of them to get out, and then another fell up the road. He ended up tying a rope to a tree as a brace rope and a guideline to get us back up the mountain. So we kind of all went slowly, helping each other, you know, kind of carrying one of the sons out of the vehicle. I do believe it was a family of 5. I think there was a daughter, but I never actually ended up seeing her. It was the most beautiful form of community I have seen in a very long time.
China Wake staff is off this week, and Amy Bell is here now to take a look at what's to come. And Amy, temperatures expected to drop.
Yeah, we have felt a big change. Even yesterday afternoon, we saw the temperature at mid-afternoon go down about 3 or 4 degrees, and then overnight it got down to about 1 or 2 degrees in most areas. Even slightly colder tonight. We should hit the 0 mark in many areas of the south coast. Just at 4 at Pitt Meadows and at YVR, 3 degrees out in Abbotsford, and also 4 degrees over in Nanaimo. So we're seeing that cool but clearer and more importantly, calm weather pattern taking over today, and it will last through tomorrow. We do not have any dramatic storms on the way, despite what that looks like. That is just, you know, your usual precipitation that will be making its way along up the coast and into the northern half of the province. That will generate some snow, as I mentioned, for the northern half of the province, and just a chance of some flurries in areas such as Prince George. But for the most part, we will be seeing things stay dry overnight and in through tomorrow. That is great news for crews that are working, of course, to clean up the flooding. Gives the waters a good chance to finally start to recede, but not out of the woods yet, and we will have to keep an eye on things over the next several days. For tomorrow, though, it will be another calm one. We'll see more cloud over on Vancouver Island, not so much in terms of sunshine. Comox, so you could see a little bit in the morning, mainly cloudy in Victoria, and that sunshine will disappear fairly quickly as we see that cloud overtaking things. We'll see mainly cloudy conditions in Whistler. You'll be at about 0 in the valley, or in the village, sorry. As I mentioned, for the northern parts of the province, we'll see a little bit of flurry activity in Dease Lake, but also some sunshine and warming up to a high of -3 tomorrow in Prince George. You hit 0, so you'll just get into those flurries, but nothing too significant in terms of accumulation. Williams Lake, a slight chance of flurries before it warms up to some sunny breaks in the afternoon. And same story for Kelowna. Cranbrook, chilly but clear, looking at -3 for your high. So yes, that's the transition. We're into cooler weather, but much more stable weather. Tomorrow we'll start off with more sunshine, much as we saw today, but we'll see increasing cloud by the noon hour, and we'll end up with overcast skies, just a high of 6. Some showers, but very light on Thursday. We dry out for Friday and get into some showers Friday night. We're into some wetter weather, though, for the weekend, but nothing too significant like last weekend, just some showers on and off throughout the weekend.
All right, thanks, Amy.
You're welcome.
I want to turn now to COVID-19. BC is reporting its first cases of a new mutation of the Delta variant. AY4.2 was first identified in July in the United Kingdom. Now it's here. Val Puri is following the story for us tonight. Val, what do we know about this strain of the virus?
Well, since it was identified in the summer overseas, it has grown gradually, mostly in the United Kingdom. Health officials say the virus moves with people, and when there's a lot of transmission, it mutates. They're not surprised to see it here. BC has 3 cases in one family.
The cases that we have of the AY4.2 are in the Fraser Health region right now, and we're doing contact tracing as we do for all cases to see where they might have acquired it. These are the first ones that are not travel related.
Dr. Henry says so far there's no indication that vaccines are less effective against the AY4.2 strain. Meanwhile, the first 5,000 doses of the one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine arrived in BC on Friday. It'll be offered to unvaccinated healthcare workers on unpaid leave who want to get back to work. And there's no Health Canada approval yet, but Dr. Henry is confident that children aged 5 to 11 could have their vaccinations by Christmas.
Well, can we chat about restrictions a little bit? What's the status there? Because I think people are wondering if things are going to change, loosen, or tighten, really.
Well, Friday is the day that additional restrictions in the north, in the interior, and the eastern Fraser Valley are supposed to be removed or eased. But can't say for sure that'll happen. Dr. Henry says she's working with colleagues around the province to make restrictions more coherent, and we can expect some harmonization. But she didn't detail exactly what that means. Henry expects there will still be additional restrictions in place in areas where immunization rates are low and transmission remains high. For everyone else, for now, the basics remain in place. The focus is on getting vaccinated, washing hands, wearing masks, minimizing time with large groups indoors. Now, the one thing that will not happen here, there will be no restrictions just for people who are not vaccinated. That's happened in Austria, where unvaccinated people are only allowed to leave home to go to work. That won't be happening here.
Val Perry live for us tonight. Thanks, Val. A 51-year-old man is dead after being hit by a car today in Vancouver's West End. The VPD says a Dodge Ram and a Toyota Prius collided just after midnight at the intersection of Davie and Thurlow. The impact resulted in the Dodge Ram skidding and hitting a man in a wheelchair who was on the sidewalk. Investigators are trying to figure out whether driver impairment was a contributing factor in the crash. Hundreds of cars are stuck in Hope with their drivers waiting it out, hoping the roads might open to get them home. After the break, we hear from a UBC professor who studies the environment and the economy, and he just happens to be stuck in Hope.
We're obviously not at the ROM right now. We're in an undisclosed location.
A Partly the reason it's off-site is because of just the amount of alcohol here. It becomes a fire hazard. And so we keep them off-site where we can have intense kind of fire security protocols. It's not right now designed to allow visitors in, but we're trying to find means of giving people a window into this side of the ROM. So welcome to the ROM's basement. This is one of the ROM's several libraries of life. This is a collection of about 110,000 jars of fishes, a little over 1.5 million specimens, encompassing about 7,600 species. With each jar being like a book or telling a story about the history of the planet and the relationships among the life on Earth. The collection goes back to before 1900. And so those old specimens allow us a window into how streams and rivers and the oceans looked in the past.
What do you think is so enthralling about fish and learning more about them?
The amazing thing about fish is just their diversity. There are over 36,000 described species of fishes, and they range from under a centimeter long to many meters long. They're incredibly beautiful, and then just really amazing behaviors. In the Amazon alone, where I work, we estimate that there are thousands of undescribed species still today. And so a lot of my work is focused on describing those species, discovering those species, and then adding those to our registry of species that we know in the world. We have Peru here, Trinidad and Tobago, Palau over here. So it's a lamprey from over 100 years ago.
Wow.
So this is our dispensing room and our large specimen storage. It's like a black-tip reef shark. So one of the really neat and amazing things about this fish is it is more closely related to us as humans than to all the other fishes in the collection. It's part of a group called the Sarcopterygians, or the lobe-fin fishes. So this is the world record lake trout. This specimen weighs 105 pounds. It's from Lake Athabasca, Canada.
I'm noticing this room is quite pungent.
I've spent many wonderful hours immersed in this smell and the alcohol and the fumes, and it just smells like knowledge.
Whoa.
A sculpin from the Northwest Territories. We anticipate that all of these collections will be around hundreds of years into the future, and so future generations can then study the biodiversity of today.
A Vancouver man stranded in Hope is likening the torrential rains to monsoons he experienced in India. The UBC professor says he's frustrated officials haven't been clear about when he and others might be able to go home.
I mean, can you believe this? I mean, in terms of what British Columbia has seen in just the last couple of days?
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, it's more than a couple of days, right? I mean, this summer we had the wildest heat we've ever seen, at least I've ever seen in British Columbia. I'm from India, and then we were seeing temperatures of 49.5 degrees in Lytton, things that we don't typically see out in the worst heat waves in Delhi. And it was shocking. And now we're into what was predicted, if anyone who sort of follows climate change, that we'll get events of rain that are very concentrated. And so, I mean, yeah, it's surprising how quickly the predictions we made on climate change are coming true.
Did it kind of almost feel like the monsoons of India? Did it have that kind of feel?
It does, actually. Yeah, it does feel a little bit like the monsoons. Although the monsoons are shorter and sharper, we get a big dump of rain. It's a little bit maybe more intense in terms of the heaviness of the rain, but it doesn't last as long. I mean, I'm used to having sort of an hour or two of the monsoon and then it dries out. But yeah, I mean,
this was just constant, right?
Although in India, yeah, it's just constant. Although in India, there have been landslides because the monsoon's doing this in there too, right? There are now times in the mountains there where they get really heavy rain for a few days and they get landslides too. It's not, this is not unique. I mean, we're seeing this all over the world.
What are you hearing from officials in terms of how and when you can return home to Vancouver?
Yeah, Andrew, I mean, Lauren, who called me before, and I was saying that to her, that I wish someone in the Ministry of Infrastructure or in the Ministry of Transport in BC would sort of just come out and say, this is what we all need to do before you can get out. Because at this point, over the last 3 days, we've been thinking, oh, maybe tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. And I went to sleep last night thinking, maybe tomorrow morning I'll have some information I can get out. But no, we have no idea as to what all needs to be done. And I think we're waiting for more information. All we get is Drive BC, which has about 3 or 4 lines on each one of the blockades. But it's not a lot of information as to what needs to be done before we can actually get out.
And we've just heard from the Prime Minister. He's let Premier John Horgan know that the feds are ready to provide support to the province, both to keep people safe now and to help rebuild in the coming months. And before we go tonight, just an update on the Canada-Mexico men's soccer match. Canada up 1-0 at halftime. Have a good evening.